So far we have discussed what is Raspberry Pi. Now we will move on to the hardware design portion. So these are all the contents that we are going to discuss in this session. So hardware components of Raspberry Pi, the hardware design of Raspberry Pi, and basic setup, operating system that is used in Raspberry Pi, and the application of Raspberry Pi. So first thing, hardware components. So what are all the components that is available in the Raspberry Pi? So ARM CPU bar GPU Broadcom BCM2837. So this configuration of processor is used in Raspberry Pi. So this is ARM based processor. It is also called as system on chip SoC. The term is very important. And it is made up of an ARM central processing unit and a video core 4 graphic processing unit. This CPU handles all the computations that make a computer work. So for example, taking input and doing calculations and proceeding and producing with the output. And this GPU handles what? Graphics output. So the next hardware component is GPU, general purpose input and output pins. So these are exposed to input and output connection ports. So as I have already mentioned in the specification parts, there are totally 40 GPIO, that is general purpose input and output pins are available. So from that you can take the output and also you can give the input with the help of these pins. So the next RCA jack, it is a connection plug. It allows the connection of analog TVs and other similar output devices. And we are having 3.5 mm audio out jack. So this is for connecting audio output devices such as you can use headphones or speakers with the help of these ports. As I have already mentioned that it can be used, it can be plugged into a computer or TV. So with the help of these two, it can be easily done. The next is LED. So this is for viewing the output. For example, switch on is indicated by glowing the LED and switch off is indicated by the LED gets off. And USB 2.0 socket. So it is a common connection port for peripheral devices of all types. So you can connect your keyboard, you can connect your mouse, or you can connect your external USB device. So whatever it may be, you can connect through this USB 2.0 socket. So totally 4 USB ports are available in Raspberry Pi 3. And the next thing is HDMI socket. So this allows you to connect a high definition television or other compatible device using HDMI cable. It is just like to connect a CPU with your computer monitor. So you may see the wire that is called as HDMI. And it is powered from micro USB socket. That is, here the 5-volt micro USB power connector into which we can plug a compatible power supply. RCA video socket. So far we have seen RCA audio socket. Similarly, video can also be connected here. And the main important thing is SD card slot. So this is a full-sized SD card slot. So what it actually holds? So it actually is having the operating system of Raspberry Pi. So an SD card with OS installed is required for booting the device. So you can download the OS from the net and you can save it in the SD card, and if you put the SD card in the slot, then automatically Raspberry Pi start to booting it. It mainly holds the operating system. You should remember the purpose of SD card is to keep the operating system used in Raspberry Pi. And 10x100 base T Ethernet socket. So this connector allows for wired network access, and header footer printer for print for camera connection. So it is to capture the camera. So these are all the basic hardware components which are available in Raspberry Pi. So I think you may clear the each and every component, for what each and every component are used. So now we will move on to the design of Raspberry Pi. So where these pins are, whatever we have seen in the hardware components, where that are located in the Raspberry Pi. So if you see, this will be the system on chip, that is ARM processor. So normally quad core ARM processor is used. So the processing speed of processor is 1.4 gigahertz. And onboard Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, I have already mentioned in the specification part, in Raspberry Pi 3 alone this facility is available. And the important thing, see, the SD card slot is available at the back portion of Raspberry Pi. So this SD card slot is used to hold the operating system which is used in Raspberry Pi, which is very important. And DSI display port is also there. And here the USB power input. So where the power connector cable is used to plug in, and this is the HDMI output port where you can connect the Raspberry Pi to the monitor, and CSI camera port is there, and this is the audio jack, RCA audio jack and video jack, and mainly this will be your Ethernet 10 bar 100 LAN port Ethernet. From this you can connect wired network connections. And here the 4 USB ports. I have mentioned the new Raspberry Pi Modern 3 is having 4 USB ports in which you can connect the mouse or keyboard or USB device, etc. And coming to the important portions of Raspberry Pi, that is GPIO, general purpose input and output. We are having totally 40 general purpose input and output pins where you can access your input and output. Here it shows the LED. So it will give you the detailed picture of hardware design and where the components are located. So you should keep in mind this. And basic setup of Raspberry Pi. So if you have HDMI cable, monitor, keyboard, mouse and 5V power adapter for Raspberry Pi and LAN cable and minimum 2 GB micro SD card. If you are having all these things along with your Raspberry Pi board, you can connect these things to the Raspberry Pi and you can make use of it. So the SD card slot is up to 32 GB, so you can, it's enough to use 8 GB or 16 GB, so to hold the operating system. And how to make it work? So this picture shows you an idea. So this is the power cable, power adapter, 5V power cable where the input plug-in 5V is given here, and this will be the system on chip. And this will be the USB port where the keyboard wire and mouse wire is connected. The USB can also be connected. And here the LAN, Ethernet cable is connected, general purpose input output pins, SD card, this is the SD card slot. So this is how the connection is made with the external world from the Raspberry Pi. And so as I have mentioned that you have to boot the Raspberry Pi only if you are having operating system in SD card. So you have to download the operating system and you have to save it in the SD card. Then if you put the SD card in the slot, then automatically it will be working as a microcomputer. So some of the official supported operating systems that are commonly used are Raspbian and Noobs. These are some official supported operating systems. Other than this, and some of the third-party OS are there, Ubuntu Mate, and Snappy Ubuntu Core, Windows 10 Core, Pinet and RISC OS. So these are all other OS that are available and you can download it from the net and you can use in the SD card slot and you can make use the Raspberry Pi as microcomputer. So now coming to the programming part. So normally Python language is used for programming the Raspberry Pi. It is used for educational purpose, and also apart from Python, whatever may be the programming language which will compile for ARM v6 can be used with the Raspberry Pi. So you should be clear in these two. So Python is normally used for Raspberry Pi programming, and the other languages which will compile ARM, you can use it for Raspberry Pi. And coming to the application of Raspberry Pi, I have taken on common applications. So from the picture you can easily capture that it will be taken from the medical application. So these are all the sensors. So if you look at, these are all the sensors. Body temperature sensor, which captures the temperature of the body, blood sensor and position sensor, airflow sensor, electrocardiogram, ECG and galvanic skin. So all these sensors are connected to so these are all called as edge devices. These sensors are connected to the Raspberry Pi. It captures the data from each and every sensors. So if I am connecting these sensors to the human body, automatically the data from each sensor is captured by the Raspberry Pi and it is connected to the monitor via HDMI cable. This is the HDMI cable that is connected to the monitor via HDMI cable, and from the monitor, this is cloud. From the cloud, you can access the data of this particular person, human health. So the health parameters are easily captured with the help of Raspberry Pi. So with this, we will come to an end of lecture 4. So I think you may clear about the hardware design and hardware components, hardware specifications of Raspberry Pi. This will show some light upon Raspberry Pi.